up, everybody? Welcome to the Ames the Answers podcast. I'm up here in the dog shack. I'm up here with my brother Noah.
What's up, everyone?
What's up? What's up?
What's up? What's up?
Guys, really, really excited. Really special episode today. Today we have a guest on the podcast. His name is Todd Palmer. But before we get to him, Noah, do you have any gripes that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have an absolute gripe, and you'll have this gripe as well.
Yeah, please tell me.
Coffee that has nut flavors,
You don't like coffee that has nut flavor?
like sweet almond or pecan.
Yeah.
Because recently I thought I liked them. Okay, and we've had a couple, and it's been horrendous, and we've thrown the bag out and we've restarted.
Yeah, pecan coffee is rough.
It's absolutely rough.
Yeah.
What's your gripe, dude? But you tell me.
I have a gripe. Lemons that are sour.
Did you want your lemon to be sweet?
I want it to be sweet. Yeah, I
I
like
have
sweet
a gripe
lime.
about that gripe.
I like sweet limes.
I want my lemon to be sour. I want my lime to be sour, and I want my sugar to be sweet.
Guys, enough of the gripes. Noah, can you please introduce our guest?
Hey guys, we have a really special guest today. I'm really excited to have him on. I think it's really going to resonate with our audience, so that's why we approached him to try and get him on. His name is Todd Palmer. He's the CEO and the founder of Diversified Industrial Staffing that's made the Inc. 5000 6 times. And the real reason I really wanted to have him on is that he was able to pay off $600,000 in debt as a single father, which is crazy and awesome. Todd, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Doing really well. So I think just to start off, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got into that amount of debt and how you paid that off?
Absolutely. So I got into that amount of debt making a lot of bad decisions, kind of like the rest of us, right?
Yep. I've been there.
Most entrepreneurs have been there, and it's a real challenge because a lot of entrepreneurs, and I suffered from this as well, suffered from imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome essentially basically means we think we have to be the oracle, we have to have all the answers. We isolate ourselves, and we don't recognize that in those moments, the thing we don't need to do is to isolate ourselves, and we need a team of people. And the way I was able to really get out of that debt is first and foremost recognize where I was at, create a strategy and a plan to get out of there, execute against that plan, and iterate and fail and fail and fail and dig myself out of that hole. And honestly, the first thing I did is I asked for help. I reached out, I hired a coach, even though I was $600,000 in debt, put it on my credit card, promised the guy I was going to pay him off, personally guaranteed that money because it was that important to me that I fixed the mistakes that I made.
Yeah. So when you were stuck in that kind of debt, I guess some people would say that it'd be very, very hard for them to hire a coach, but you kind of took that chance, right? Because you felt like the investment was worth it.
Well, absolutely. The investment was worth it. I was so far down deep in the rabbit hole, I needed to get out. When you've personally guaranteed that kind of money, essentially my house is on the line. As
Right.
you indicated, I was a single dad. There was no secondary person in my household who was going to help bail me out. And the reality is this: we got into that debt based upon some bad client decisions we made. We had a couple of clients that went bankrupt to the tune of about half of that debt amount. And we, again, made some decisions as a company, me as the leader, that frankly we're not prudent business decisions. And so when I hired the coach, he was really he had 25 years at the time, 25 years of industry experience. He had run a $550 million staffing company, and he came in about 3 hours, got me corrected, got me pointed in the right direction, and then we started to create that strategy to get out of that debt. Because really the other option was, and it was an option presented to me by my attorneys, is I could file for bankruptcy and discharge that debt and start over. But from an ethical and a moral standpoint, as the father of a young child at the time, I couldn't walk into his bedroom and say, yeah, unfortunately, I'm filing for bankruptcy. And even though I told you have to play fair with others, you have to live by a set of rules, I'm going to discharge these debts and obligations to other people and break the rules that I've tried to establish within our household. I simply just couldn't do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can't even understand the amount of pressure that you must have been feeling then as well. So when you talk to that coach, what are some of the action steps that he told you to take? Right, you're in this dire situation.
The first step, and this is what I do with our firm, Extraordinary Advisors, is we take a look at the people, because there's really 4 pillars to business. It's the people, the strategy, the execution, and the cash. And obviously my cash position was in pretty bad shape. But really those cash decisions were made by people, either myself or others. So we took a look at the entire organization, took a look at who was contributing and who was not contributing, analyzed the culture of the organization, and then we basically discovered the culture was very toxic, and it was unhealthy for people to be there for a lot of different reasons. So on September 9th, 2006, we made a very difficult decision, and I walked in and I fired my entire company, and I started over.
Oh my God.
Whoa. What was that day
That's tough.
like?
Yeah, how tough was that day?
Well, it's one of those, people talk about, those crossroad events in your life, and that was definitely one of them for me. And it did a couple of things. One, it cleared out the people that weren't executing. It allowed me to restart my mindset because my mindset was pretty depressed at the time.
I'm sure.
And it allowed me to quickly try a bunch of different things to see what was going to work. And through that iterative process, by me being 100% there 100% of the time, I was able to hire a new team, get people going in the right direction, try things, talk to clients, find out what the marketplace was looking for, and go from essentially being a general staffing provider to being a very specific, skilled niche staffing provider, which allowed us to do a couple of things. One, it increased our margins. Number two, we were able to get better payment terms. So that increased margin, those better payment terms allowed me to pay off that entire debt in full, which was probably my proudest moment as an entrepreneur.
I think it's amazing that when you were in debt, you continued to run a business, and that's something that a lot of people have trouble with when the cash flow really isn't there. Can you tell us a little bit about your mindset then? How did you push through the tough times to keep going with
and
business?
essentially like double down like that
so
instead of
hard to
stopping.
do.
Well, I absolutely had to double down, and I stopped paying myself. I personally lived on credit cards, which again is not the world's recommended way to do things. Remember, this is back in the days before there was Shark Tank and VC money, and the reality is this, guys: when you need the money the most, the banks aren't going to lend it to you. But when you don't need the money the most, they're happy to lend it to you because you're a better risk.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. So now, we've put in place, now we have financial instruments in place. So when we do have downturns in the company, we're able to, draw on those reserves. We've created a savings plan. We draw off of that so that we don't get there again. It's one of those situations where personally it was incredibly embarrassing. Professionally, it was incredibly embarrassing. And bottom line, it was a terrifying time in my life, looking at my kid saying, hey, we may not have Christmas this year. That's not a fun spot to be in.
Wow. No, how did you, so even when I first started doing Amazon, it gets really hard about the 8-month point right before you have success because you spent all this money and all this cash and you haven't really seen a ton of success yet. So how did you stay mentally focused through that? Is there any exercises you did or anything that you consciously did to get through that moment?
It seems like using your child as a single parent is like a cornerstone of what allows you to keep going on.
Absolutely. That's a really great question. So yeah, absolutely. The fact that I had no one else to turn to. It was me and him. My son, now my son's 27 and he's an accountant. Amazingly enough, he's even considering now becoming an entrepreneur, which after this story, he's kind of where his head's at.
Yeah.
But I think he learned a lot. And so it became a lot of, first of all, the coach I hired became very invested. He saw the potential in the company. He saw the potential in me, but he also saw the nightmare that the finances were. So we created a touch point program every day where I checked in with him every single day. Where's your thoughts? Where's my head at? What's going on? How can I be able to, he can provide to me the best counsel on a day-to-day basis. So he was very, very, very invested, which a lot of coaches aren't. Mm-hmm. So that first of all reset my mindset pretty quickly. Secondarily, every single day I had to highlight and focus one positive thing I had accomplished. Sometimes that positive thing was getting out of bed and going to work, but you had to focus on the positive. Because I was seeing the failure as such a win or lose game, when not recognizing that every mistake or every learning opportunity or every quote unquote failure was nothing more than just another stepping stone on the path to being successful. And I think the last thing we really did is he said, "Hey, listen, I will stick with you through all this stuff." He goes, "In that a bit, it's like a coach in sports saying, you know what? You're in a shooting slump as a basketball player. You're a hitting slump as a baseball player. I believe in you. We're going to have you in the lineup every day. We're going to get through this together." That type of essentially plugging into his confidence was immensely, immensely helpful.
That's amazing. So it sounds like you had two great things. One was the love of your son and wanting to improve for him, and then the one was the support from this mentor. And I think that one thing that you did really, really well, which when Noah and I are working with newer entrepreneurs, and we haven't been doing entrepreneurship for too long, 4 or 5 years, but is they focus too much on the macro, almost like the bigger things like I want this result instead of the micro everyday checking in. I think that your everyday checkups with your mentor were amazing. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, the real value to that, I agree with you. The real value is you can pivot daily. Like we tried this. He would say, well, okay, what'd you do today? Well, I did this. Okay, those 3 things sound really good. Those last 2 things, why did you waste your time on those? And he would say to me, how are those last 2 things you spent your time on money-making opportunities to get you to your greatest goal, which was to get out of debt, become profitable, and live the life we wanted to live? And he wouldn't chastise me. He wouldn't judge me. He would simply say, of the 5 things you did, 3 of them are money-making activities and 2 were not. Can you please explain to me why you would choose that?
But that's all. What would he consider a non-money making activity? Because sometimes even when I'm doing business stuff, I'm like, why am I doing this? Because like this is no point. So was it like a business thing, or was it like another personal thing that you were doing that you had to stop?
Both. I mean, it was both. Yeah. I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes we often make the mistake of not respecting our time and treating it as the precious commodity that it is. I would do things during the day, for example, like I would set an hour aside every week to whatever cash came in to start paying down bills. He's like, you can pay bills from home at night. You can only get new opportunities from 8 to 5. Manage your time differently. I made the mistake one time of booking a haircut in the middle of the day. He's like, what are you thinking? Why would you do that? You don't make any money getting your haircut. And it was just small little things like that.
That's fantastic.
No, I think that's awesome. I'm trying to, and I just read this book, The Effective Executive, and he basically talks about that, where as like an executive or a knowledge worker, you have to focus on the opportunities and not the problems. And if you're just focused on problems, you're not gaining anything, because by fixing a problem, you can only go back to stasis, and by working on an opportunity, you can actually increase something.
Absolutely, and I think the brain is going to operate differently as well. When the brain sees possibility and opportunity, it's going to fire differently as compared to being in problem-solving mode.
Mm-hmm. So how did you balance being a father? So you're trying to work out of this, that you're working with a coach, you're working super, super hard. How did you balance your personal life being a father with this?
I was very fortunate at the time. I had a significant other who was very invested in not only seeing me succeed as a father, but also seeing me succeed as a business professional. So she really stepped up at that time, and she was really instrumental helping with going to parent-teacher conferences, helping with some of the sports my son was playing in, different things like that. We're no longer together, but she certainly has always had my respect. And I often say to my entrepreneurial clients, you've got to have a great support system at home in order to be your best at work. And I really was very, very blessed and fortunate, first and foremost, to have that. The second support system that I was fortunate enough to have is I'm part of a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization, otherwise known as EO. And it's a peer-to-peer learning environment with other CEOs and entrepreneurs who are primarily, over $1 million in revenue. And only 4.3% of companies ever reach $1 million. So you're with a pretty rarefied air group of people, and they were hugely supportive in helping me bounce business ideas off of, and being there when I had my good days and cheering on my successes, but also being there when I had my bad days and helping me think through how I could problem solve and strategize. So by the time I did get home, I was in a much better mindset to deal with the family I had.
I think that one thing that Todd is talking about right now is the support that you need to start off as an entrepreneur. And I just want to bring this home back for our audience. When you're starting an Amazon business, when you're starting to launch these products, you need support from fellow sellers, or you need support from your family or your friends or someone. Like Noah and I, we have each other, even though we'll yell at each other in the office and there's screaming sometimes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's high fives.
Pain.
There's pain, but there's also good times. You need that support group behind you to start off with. We're humans, and we need that social contact. I mean, we can't just jam away on our computers forever alone.
Well, the thing of it is, too, and this is one of the things that I learned from people who had been down the path with me, who were 10 years older through EO, is it's a really simple phrase. And I think it would resonate whether you're an entrepreneur who's running a large company, an entrepreneur who's just starting out, and everything in between. Is an entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur at risk. We all need that support system to get us to where we want to go.
I love that. That's great.
Hey man, when you talked about diversified industrial staffing and kind of how one of the main problems you had at first was that you in a way weren't niched down enough. We talk a lot with our audience about when they're finding an item, that they need to brand it, they need to niche down to a specific audience. So how did you come up with niching down to that specific audience, I guess, industrial staffing?
Sure, and it was really you would think it's so simple, it's so easy, but we typically don't do the simplest things. What we did is we really figured out a simple process. We created 5 questions, and we asked every prospect we could get on the phone these 5 questions. And one of the questions was if you, and this is right, we were right at the tipping point of the recession starting, so hiring was really drying up. That's part of how we got into the hole of being $600,000 in debt. So we continued to spend without the revenue coming in, thinking the revenue was just around the corner, and that we never turned to that corner. In fact, everything fell off the table. So during the recession, when there's plenty of people, not a lot of jobs, we would say to clients, for example, if you could just hire one person to fit in your business, who would that person be? And a lot of clients say, well, we don't need to hire anybody. I say, well, that's not the question. What is the one person that you absolutely, if you found right now, you would make room on your team for? And it kept coming back to us over and over and over again is we need CNC programmers. We can't find them. Okay. We need high-end CMM programmers, which is a quality machine in a manufacturing environment. We need, they used to call them G6 welders. It's a welder who basically can do almost any type of weld as well as potentially weld underwater. So these 3 or 4 categories would continually come up. So then that's what the marketplace was telling us. Like, okay. So the then follow-up question would be really simple. So if I found that person today, would you see him and interview him this week? Yes, I would. And then the close was, well, you do realize they would cost more than your average contract worker. That's fine. We can have either the unicorns of the world. If you find me a unicorn, I'll pay what it costs. So really, we figured out where the tipping point was, where there was an increased demand and a diminished supply, even in a down economy, and we just exploited that.
I like this. So you really interviewed your customers, or you asked exploratory questions to find out what their pain points were, basically.
Well, not only to find out what their identified pain points for, but also what does your ideal world look like? If I can bring you your ideal person, would you pay for them? Would you interview them? I know you're on a hiring freeze. Would you make room on your team for them? So again, I'm a big sports guy. Talk to any coach, any team, even the team that wins the Super Bowl or the World Series. Hey, if I could bring you the best player in your sport, would you be interested? The answer 9 out of 10 times is going to be yes.
I think, and I think it's great what you did to kind of view their worldview. I think that sometimes when I'm making an item, let's say I'm making an item for like carpenters that I know that carpenters are going to use. We use tape measures as an example all the time. I will find my uncle's a carpenter, so I'll talk to my uncle and be like, "Hey, what if this tool did this? Does that make any sense? Does that make sense for you? Would that help you at all, or would you think that was stupid?" So I think that when you're making this can hit our audience when you're making an item. Reach out to people in your life that could use that item and really interview them because you never know what they're going to say.
Yeah, when I hear you say that, the first thing I think of is, are you making an item or are you solving a problem? Because your items solve that problem. So the carpenter's going to say, that item solves this problem. Ask what other problems are you having that you can't get solved, and what other tools can we put into your toolbox to make your life easier?
Exactly. So when you talk about falling forward into success, could you go into that a little bit? Because we've definitely, me and Adam have tried. This is our what business?
Fifth or sixth
business. So, and every single time that we have made a business, we've learned something new. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, it really comes down to, I know when I was, in 06, 07, I was feeling pretty down. I was feeling like a failure. I was feeling like my actions were creating failures in my world because I was really seeing it as a win or lose scenario. And one of the things the coach worked on, and I currently use a different coach now, and the constant battle for the mindset is to focus on what are you learning, not where are you failing. If you think about it from a tech perspective, so many people in the tech space are so good at failure. They blow me away. They realize that the version they issue today is not going to be the final version. There may never be a final version. There's going to be known bugs and unknown bugs. Bill Gates will release a product that's 80% done and let the marketplace fix it for him for free, which is frankly brilliant, but irritating to the customer. But he has a monopoly, and customers have to buy the product. So again, going back to the failing forward into success mentality, it really comes down to taking the word failure, reframing it is really nothing more than learning. Because you can, Monahan, how many iterations of dominoes did he do? I think it was 36. my favorite story to tell really is that from Colonel Sanders. He at age 65, he lost his only restaurant. He had to put the only thing he had was his chicken recipe, put it in a briefcase, went around the country looking to sell a franchise concept to people. He went out and on literally 1,009 appointments before he ever got his first sale. You can't tell me that he backed along the way. I mean,
I love it.
Car at the age 65, it's crazy.
The Colonel.
And within 10 years, he had 600 locations. But what if he would have quit at time 1,000? I mean, He just continued to learn. And the biggest thing of the story was he stopped frying the chicken and started pressurizing it, which locked in and created a whole different flavor sector for him. But again, if he hadn't really taken that feedback from the customers, he never would have failed forward into success. So really, again, it goes back to what we talked about. It's like, check your mindset. Where's your mindset at? Then create a strategy, execute that strategy, fail, and continue to work the strategy. Find out what the marketplace needs. What do your customers need? What products on Amazon do they want to buy? And if you try it and it doesn't work, don't be married to it. Fail forward it. It's really that simple, but the discipline around it is really complicated.
Yeah, I love it. It does sound like a simple concept, but it is hard to learn. I love learning about the OGs of entrepreneurship, like the Colonel or like Andrew Carnegie.
I know. I love learning the different stories about like the OG entrepreneurs.
I haven't heard that story before. That's great. So one thing you're talking about a little bit is testing new ideas. And I think that when people are just starting an Amazon business, they seem to want to do items that are like, for example, a salad spinner, or for example, a knife, or something that they use in their personal lives, but it may not be the actual best thing for a business. So how do you differentiate between something that you want and something that would be a good idea for a business?
Well, I think it really comes down to intentions versus expectations. If the intention of the entrepreneur is to solve a problem versus the expectation is I have the only right answer in the marketplace, I have the only mousetrap, then I think they're going to do a whole lot better. I think all your entrepreneurs will relate to this. One of my favorite TV shows is Shark Tank. I love it. Watch it every week.
Oh, it's great.
And I watch
that show.
On CNBC. I just put it on at 8 and go to bed at 11. It's playing in the background because I'm always going to learn something. Mark Cuban reads 3 books a week. These people are wicked smart. And Barbara Corcoran's on there. And one of her famous stories is her first year into real estate in New York City as an agent, before she ever got on Shark Tank, she made $77,000. She took that entire profit and put it into a marketing idea of, hey, if I can put my apartment listings onto videotape, this is how long ago it was, if I can put them onto videotape and send those videotapes out to people within my community or people across the country who want an apartment in New York City, it gives me a huge, huge advantage over my competition because my intention is to open the New York City real estate market up to the world. So she tries it. She bombs. By the time the videotape arrives out in St. Louis, half the apartments on the tape are gone. They're sold by somebody else. She sells them or what have you. So she spent all this money on these cameras, all this money on production equipment. Basically her life savings. She has all this content, and by the time it's delivered, it's dead on arrival. All of a sudden, she realized, hey, I've heard of this new thing called the World Wide Web. Maybe I'll put some of these images out on the internet. Mm-hmm. She throws this stuff out on the internet. 2 days later, she gets certified funds from London, England for someone who's buying one of her apartments. So again, her intention was to open up the marketplace. Her expectation was that it was going to be done through videotape, but when she focused on the intention of opening the marketplace, she found another solution via the internet, and now she's worth $80 million.
That's an awesome story.
That's another great story.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Killing it, Todd.
That is really great. So she's trying to do one. She has that same intention. She tries to do it one method. It doesn't work, but she just switches and takes a risk. I love that.
No, bring it home to an Amazon business. How might that apply? I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
You just spotted me.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I think that could apply. Where you bring it home. Brain is not working.
Yeah, if you're trying
synapse is not firing.
If you're trying to do a product, say you're trying to do a swimming pool float, and you end up doing a flamingo, and your intention is to have a float that floats in the pool for the summer. It doesn't work out. Then you could do something like a tie-dye pool noodle or something, because your intention stays the same, but the way you try to execute that intention is different.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, awesome, Todd. It's been great having you on. Those are awesome stories. Your story is awesome. Where can people find out more about you or find you?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm really easy to find. You can find me at extraordinaryadvisors.com. And what I'd like to offer to your audience is the opportunity to have a conversation. I'm happy to give an hour free to anybody who goes to our website, fills out a form, and books it through my assistant, Kelly. Get on my calendar. I'll give you an hour's worth of my time for free just to see if I can help you out, because so many people, going back from my coach in 2006 to the coach I currently use, I still drink the Kool-Aid, have really helped me evolve as an entrepreneur. It's amazing that our team has made the 85,000 6 times. At one point, we're considered Michigan's most successful company. And I'd like to be able to create that legacy with your audience. So if anybody, whether you have an Amazon business or a brick and mortar business or just a service-based business, I'm happy to give an hour of my time, hear what you got going on, potentially give you a couple of ideas that will get you going in the direction you want to be in.
Awesome. And we will include those links in the show notes and on our website. Todd, before you go, we have 3 questions that we ask all of our guests. So this is a big 3 right here. First question, what is the worst job that you've ever had?
The worst job I've ever had.
Worst job, one you hated the most.
So I think I've actually told the story to my son. I had a job in college where I worked in a plating factory on midnight shift. And this is back in the day where the plating metal parts are basically, they come on a conveyor, they come into a bin, you take them out of the bin, and you hang them on a rack. Well, those parts are covered in oil. So you literally, you walk in clean, you walk out a mess. Again, this is back in the early 1990s, so I'm dating myself. I get that. And it was just awful. I could only do it for 2 days, and I quit. It was terrible. It was just awful. So that was probably the hardest, worst job I've ever had. But really what it is, because at the time I was between my junior and senior year of college, and I was thinking about, I don't need to complete my degree. I'm just going to go work. Boy, did that redirect me pretty quickly. I completed my degree after that summer.
Yeah, I bet. That's good. I bet. I always talk about, obviously we're young, but when I have a child, I want him to do at least spend a little bit doing work like that he hates, so he can appreciate work that he likes.
Oh, I did the same thing with my son. He had to mow the lawn every weekend. Now, he got his degree in accounting. He's doing great, and he lives in an apartment, no lawn.
Second question: what is the one tool or trick you use to stay focused on your work and avoid distraction?
And that's a great question, because between email, between texts, between all the distractions, it's very, very easy to get distracted. The biggest thing I do is, I know for me, I'm my best in the morning. So I book all of my important and significant meetings or conversations first thing. I actually heard that from Rick Pitino when he was coaching at Kentucky. He goes, I could get all my tough stuff out of the way first thing in the morning. Because inevitably there's going to be interruptions, especially if you're the CEO of a company or you're dealing with a lot of customers. So I prioritize my schedule out at least 2 days in advance if I can, and I do my very best to stick to it. And very few things on my schedule move, because that's the one thing I control is my schedule. I want to control my time, because time is finite. Time is what I bill off of, and time is is not a non-renewable resource. I can't ever get it back. So to be interrupted, it doesn't serve me well. And again, going back to what the coach said to me in 2006, if it's not a money-making conversation and it doesn't tie to family, why are you doing it during business hours?
Oh, my God, that is good.
Yeah.
That is good.
That's great. Question number 3. What book would you recommend? Could be a business book, could be personal, whatever.
Well, I'm a big believer in, knowing who you are. Know thyself so you can be the most successful thing you can do. So I'm going to take liberty here, and I'm going to recommend 2 books. First, I'd recommend Start With Why from Simon Sinek, because it helps the entrepreneur figure out not what they do, but why they do it. And he has some great stories about Steve Jobs in there and how he figured out why he did what he did, how he did what he did, and oh, by the way, I'm going to do it through Apple computers. He wasn't in the computer business. He had a very different mindset. And so Simon will talk about that, and then he helps the entrepreneur with some exercises to figure out why they do what they do. Why do they have the Amazon business they have? Why are they offering the products that they offer? Why are they offering the services that they offer? And it helps kind of take it back to center so that you know why you're doing what you do. So if you're going to be spending time, effort, and money to do it, you know why you're doing it. Second book I'd recommend is Freak Factor from David Rendell. And it talks about playing to your strengths. And he has a really great phrase in there where he says, what's weird makes you wonderful, meaning the things that you're told not to do. And he has a great story where he says, as a kid, I was told to sit still, shut up, and pay attention. So now I get paid to walk around, talk on stage, and do a million different things. Point of it is, if I had listened to the people who told me to not be who I naturally was, I wouldn't be here with you today. And I think that's not only can apply to an entrepreneur, but it can also apply to anybody who's raising children, to encourage children to be who they are, not who we think they should be.
That's awesome. That's great. I definitely got told I was terrible in school, and I got told to sit down and shut up all the time.
And now you're on a podcast.
Yeah, and now I'm on Amazon business, on podcast business, so it's great.
Wait, I'm curious. So you're an entrepreneur and you have your son. So when your son goes to school and your teacher tells him, to do an assignment, how do you kind of nurture entrepreneurship in your kid?
Well, and that's a great question because I dropped the ball with that. I'll be honest with you. I didn't do a great job of that when he was in high school. And then when he got to college, I had a different mindset. I had evolved. And he and I would just have very interesting conversations. I'd say he would be part of groups, for example, at university. And he'd say, I'm the only one in my group participating. I'm the only one who's really doing it. I'm carrying the load for everybody. And it makes me angry and I'm frustrated. And I went to the teacher and they're not listening. And it's, a lot of it is coaching. It's redirecting. And I would say to him, my son's name is Tyler. I'd say, Tyler, really, what do you want out of this education? Well, I want a good job. Well, that's a result. That's a byproduct. What do you want? He goes, well, I want to learn how to be the best accountant I can be. All right, and how do you think you can do that? By doing the work. Is it really your intention to make sure that your classmates are the best accountants they can be? He goes, that's not my problem. All right, then. Focus on what's important to you. Focus on why you want it and strive towards it. If you have to sometimes do other things that you don't necessarily want to do, focus on what's important to you and work your way back into that and put that goal out there. And so if I was working with a younger person today, I'm seeing somebody and she has an 8-year-old and we had a conversation about homework. She's like, I don't want to do my homework. I said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to own a building. So, okay, so you want to go into real estate. I know a lot about that. Let me help you. She said, okay, how do I do that? I said, well, in order to go into real estate, you have to be able to secure a bank loan. In order to secure a bank loan, you've got to be able to write a plan. In order to be able to write a plan, you have to have an education to support the writing of that plan. In order to become educated, you have to do your homework starting tonight.
That's perfect. Go back
That's
to the
awesome.
micro, from macro to micro.
Todd,
Yeah.
it was really,
Yeah.
really great having you on, man. Thank you so much. Those are great stories. Your story is great. Hey guys, you can find Todd and all the links to find him. They'll be in the show notes, and they'll also be in the show notes if you're listening to this on the website. So Todd, man, thanks so much for coming on.
Fellas, thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks, man.
Bye, Todd.